Hey, David Brewster here with a new episode of Chordplay. This is the chords of Typo Negative, and I've had some requests to feature some Typo Negative music, and definitely a legendary doom gothic metal band. And Typo Negative formed in Brooklyn, New York in 1989, and during their career released 7 studio albums, 4 compilations. They were nicknamed the Drab Four, after the Fab Four from the Beatles. But definitely a very interesting, detuned, growling, kind of rumbling, metal group. Dark themes, heavy riffs, and definitely horror and video game, connections, soundtracks and stuff like that. So if you're a Typo Negative fan, a fan of Metal Month here on my channel, or maybe you're just pumping up for October, here we go. So in the guitar department in Typo Negative's music, we have Kenny Hickey, definitely an overlooked pioneer of these growling, drop tunings. And you got to keep in mind, like the late 80s, early 90s, there weren't really very many bands tuning down like this. So definitely Typo Negative kind of borrowed a page from Tony Iommi's, Black Sabbath legacy as far as those low rumbling tunings. And pretty much right out of the gate, Typo Negative, tuned to B, which is very low. And you have to kind of caress and pick and fret a little bit differently than, say, standard tuning or down a half step, because tuning and intonation is really hard on these rubber band strings. And definitely Kenny Hickey was kind of a pioneer, like I said, harnessing these growling and low, roars from the guitar. Really interesting guitarist and an interesting way to play the guitar. I'm pretty sure I've talked about this before in one of the Richie Kotzen episodes I've made here on the channel, but I did see Jackal, Typo Negative, and Richie Kotzen 30 years ago this year in concert. And Typo Negative would have been on their Bloody Kisses tour. Honestly, I went to that show to see Richie Kotzen. That was my interest. I was familiar with Jackal. I had no idea who Typo Negative was. They were, relatively new on the scene, at least for me. And when they came out, it was strikingly different. The growling tunings, everybody's wearing black. It was like the Misfits or Glenn Danzig or something. I was like, what is this? But it was cool. And it definitely helped me put their music and their name, on my radar. And I've been a fan ever since. And as far as Typo Negative's horror connection with, films and video games, definitely I Know What You Did Last Summer, Freddy vs. Jason, the remake of Night of the Demons, and also the video game The Darkness 2 features Typo Negative music. Music and chord-based examples in this episode came from 4 Typo Negative albums, and I tried to find some interesting chord moments. There are a lot of power chords happening, in this lesson. And with the drop tuning and growling distortion, that's kind of the feature, really, because, in Typo Negative's music, the guitar is more of a texture, kind of a background, this aggressive, kind of angry sound, more than guitar solos and shredding and that kind of stuff. So the role, in Typo Negative's music, the guitar's a little different, but that's kind of the interesting part of their music, is kind of noticing what Kenny did, on guitar, kind of behind, Peter's aggressive, heavy, detuned bass. So anyway, here we go. With the opening, that's Love You to Death from October Rust, and we're tuned down 2.5 whole steps for this. I did give you the tuning notice at the beginning of this episode, but we're down 2.5 whole steps. So your low E is a B. So you're going to have B, E, A, D, F sharp, B. your strings are going to feel like rubber bands, but Love You to Death, something like this. Something like that. And we're going to basically start with the single notes, and then it's basically a C sharp power chord right there. And then I think this is actually Peter Steele's bass doing this little single note riff. But it seems so essential to kind of keep the rhythm going for that riff. I added it in there. I don't think the guitar is actually doing that. I think that's just bass. Like that. But you can totally play it on guitar. And then right there, we're basically going to a stack power chord now. Right, like that. So we're basically doing F sharp over C sharp like that, and you get that heavier sound. And that's what I think he's doing, because I don't think he's actually grabbing the F sharp down there. I think it's that one, which kind of mirrors that C sharp we had right there. Like that. Back to that, that's like an E over B, and then you're doing single notes right there. Right back into that C sharp power chord. Right there before the verse, you can do that intro kind of flutter riff again. And then it's heavy moshing on the C sharp. And you're basically moving from that C sharp over to this A. And that sounds like Godzilla or something, attacking Tokyo right there. It's huge. But that C sharp to A flat, G to G flat like that. And you start playing with the octave, that F sharp, E, F sharp to that higher F sharp. And then loop that riff. You'll definitely keep your neighbors awake at, late at night playing that. But that totally serves up that heavy, doom, gothic kind of flavor, and the tuning is a big reason for that. Cool riff, great song, and I love October Rust. That's a great album. Next up's Der Untermensch from the album Slow, Deep, and Hard, and this is really just basic power chords. There is a flat 5 chord kind of creeping in. So it's not really so much, what they're playing, it's how they're playing it. There's so much attitude and this kind of aggressive, feel like this. Something like that, really basic stuff here. Just an E power chord up to a G. Keep in mind that's not actually E and G in this tuning. I'm just referring to where it is on the fretboard there. But that E5, the G5, and then it's a C sharp flat 5 down there. And the flat 5 happens to be the note G right there, which is the power chord we just played before that. So your ear picks that out, these common tones right there. It's technically the same note we just played right there, but as part of that C sharp flat 5. Cool riff, and it's really basic, but totally heavy and just sounds evil. Next up's the song Paranoid from the album The Origin of the Feces. And once again, it's the way it's being played here. There's nothing crazy happening chord-wise. It's just power chords, but there's attitude. There's this dark, heavy kind of feel going on like this. And keep it slow. Super heavy, like sludge metal or whatever, and it's just the low E open and that E power chord down to that D, and then you're just spelling out G, F sharp, E right there, and that D to E there at the end. Simple riff, but listen to it and listen to that attitude and aggression. You know, it sounds like a horror movie. Next up's the song Blood and Fire from the album Bloody Kisses, and once again, this is not hard to play, but you really have to watch how you're playing this. You can't pick or strum too hard, you can't, dig in or fret too hard, or your guitar's gonna go out of tune. We're tuned down 2.5 whole steps. But Blood and Fire is like this. Simple riff, but you have to really, like I said, watch your tuning. You have to watch, everything you're doing, because just one, extra little ounce of pressure from your finger, or maybe picking a little bit too hard, strumming a little bit too hard, it's gonna knock your guitar, at least temporarily, out of tune. But we're doing E, G to A for that first part, and then it's like a scratch hit into a C5, and then a scratch hit into this G5 up there, and then a scratch hit into that D5 right there. So nothing groundbreaking chord-wise, but listen to it and listen to that heavy flavor. It's like, man, that's cool. And once again, it's that tuning. It's just growling in your face. Next up's the song Christian Woman from the album Bloody Kisses. And this is interesting as far as what the guitar and Peter's bass is doing, because the guitar is basically doing this for the first part. Peter's doing on his bass, but the way the guitar and bass come together is so cool. I'm using the MXR clone looper here, like this. It's just basically power chords after that. Once again, in this tuning, that sounds like dinosaurs are chasing after you or something. I mean, it just sounds super heavy. And that low thunk, from that low E power chord down there. Right there. I mean, that sounds like the kind of music you hear when the monster is about to grab you. I mean, that's really cool. Next up's the song Burnt Flowers Fallen from the album October Rust, and check this out, something like this. Nothing really hard to play, it's just a cool riff, and that's a cool song too. But a D power chord, up to an F power chord, and then it's an F flat 5 temporarily, back to that F5, and a G5. And it's like part of a, what, like a C over G right there, you know, like that. And back to that F, up to that G, and then you're going to slide G to A, F, G power chords, and then do the whole thing again. Okay, last but not least is the song Green Man from the album October Rust, and I'm going to go ahead and admit, this song completely stumped me. I don't know what tuning Kenny used in the song. He wasn't using the 2.5, down, 2.5 whole steps down tuning. There's something different happening here. I tried to track it down. I found no live footage of them playing this. I found no sheet music. I found some online tabs that seemed kind of iffy. A guitar tutorial, here on YouTube that seemed kind of iffy. So what I did is I just listened to the song, and it did seem like they were targeting C sharp a lot. And then if you listen to the song, you can hear the top 2 strings sound like it's tuned to G sharp and D sharp. That's what I came up with. And then that didn't really make any sense as far as anything related to like standard tuning or, common tunings. So I took that G sharp that the B string was tuned to, and then I tuned, the lower strings to that B string. So I'm basically tuned down 1.5 whole steps, and then my high E is tuned to D sharp. So that's a weird tuning. Doesn't make much sense, but if you play Green Man, it sounds like the song, like this. Finger picking, and I'm also combining 2 different parts together because I suspect that melody, I think that's actually a keyboard, and then the acoustic guitar behind it is picking, and that's where you're hearing the those open strings. So I combined those parts together because I wanted to hear that on one guitar like that. I'm just grabbing, that B note there, and then the high E and the B string, which are tuned to D sharp and G sharp. But then I'm climbing up, that D sharp to E to F sharp. Reaching back and grabbing that A. And then all the way up to that G sharp right there. And then grab that D note right there. And then do it again. I'm not going to claim that's 100% accurate. I'm not really sure what tuning, Kenny used for that song, but that's about the closest approximation I could make of that tune. I was trying to, make sense of this and what I was hearing, which I did hear B sometimes, but it wasn't that really low growling B. That led me to believe they were using a different tuning mainly for that one song, and I have no idea if that's actually it. But it's pretty close, so just a heads up. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Chordplay with this look at the Chords of Typo Negative. Definitely a very interesting and influential band. A lot of groups kind of followed in their footsteps, after Typo hit the scene. And definitely fits this time of year perfectly. Halloween, spooky season, metal month here on my channel. I don't know who Dracula's favorite band is, but if he picked one, I have a feeling it would be Typo Negative. Of course, the blood connection's kind of obvious. But it sounds like Dracula's kind of, soundtrack or whatever, where it's heavy, it's dark, it's moody, gothic, light some candles, put some black stuff on, and really, just mosh it out. Cool music, definitely, like I said, fits this time of year great. And thanks for the requests, because this episode totally came from the viewers' requests out there. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to Night Lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.